Huh.
As I mentioned in a previous video on grain quarter sawing wood, this is the this is the same piece of wood that I showed in the video that I was quarter sawing for laminated sides on a guitar. And so I was saying that if you could take the scrap, the waste side, and you could orient the cut in such a way. Here you can see I've beveled this cut. There you go. So that the growth rings, here we are somewhere, I'll go this way. Growth rings are, you can see here, somewhat perpendicular. I just adjusted my, so I'm going to take a little steeper cut here so that I'm more a true 90 to the growth rings. And then I'm going to cut a strip out of that, or I'll get a few strips out of that for kerfing, kerf lining. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing. I just wanted to kind of explain what was going on here. I will get some footage of it. So there you go. So I don't want to fiddle far with the camera and then continue to do just that. So let's see. This shows a little, well, it's almost exactly 3/16. I don't know if he actually calls a dimension out. I don't know if I mentioned this before. This is JAG. What's the Elite Guitar Plans? I actually called or emailed and asked if I could send these back and get a refund, but I couldn't. I didn't want to wait, and they were close. If you look at the call out dimensions, everything was fine. It was just that when you actually measured things, they don't match the call out dimension. And then you had other things that were kind of whacked, like if you look at this, for instance. You got a pickup cavity here that measures, the cavity itself is measuring 13 and 11/16, and you go and you measure this cavity and it measures, I'm sorry, what did I say over here? I think I said 12, because there's 1 inch and 11/16, and if you go over here it's measuring 1 inch and 9/16, so it's an eighth off. Now obviously if you made that pickup cavity an 1/8 inch bigger than it needed to be in reality, then you would be, you would have an exposed cavity beyond that. So fortunately I'm not going to go by either of his numbers. Actually, I'm going to measure my pickup ring, and I actually already have humbucker templates, so that's not critical, but I'm just pointing that out as it's not accurate. And so I got another spot I can measure this kerf lining, just a random spot here, and see what it says it is. And it measures about 3/16 there as well. So I'm going to cut it a little bigger than 3/16. Like I said, I don't think he actually calls that dimension out anywhere on the plan. I wish he did, because I would cut it to that dimension rather than trust his drawing. I'm just taking a quick perusal around here, which you can't tell what I'm doing, but that's what I'm doing, just to see if there is anywhere where he shows the kerf lining in a detail or anything. I'm not seeing it, so I'm going to go with that height, and I'm trying to get this back in the camera. There we go. I'm going to go with the thickness rather of slightly over 3/16. And then I'm going to check the height, and I actually have a different rule over there. I'm just used to using the regular tape measure. Stanley, 25 foot. It's the pro's choice. Unless you're a framer, you'll say it's the 35 footer. So we're just looking slightly over a half an inch on the height. And so, yeah, right, just, well, I'm slightly under half an inch on that one. Let's see. This is what I mean. And maybe I measured it wrong, or maybe no, it's definitely a fat half inch, and then it's a shy half inch over here. So let's call it a half inch. All right. All right, I'm going to rip those strips off of that board I just milked, and do what I have to do along the way to keep it quarter sawn. So I've done, as you saw, I took a couple rips off of there, and being that they're a half an inch tall, I can get, 3 to 4 with that curve. Yeah, maybe 4 might be pushing it, and then 3 over here. Maybe only 2 of it, that bevel on there, but so I get plenty of kerf strip there, but I still have this little piece, and I'm going to sand the end down so I can see the grain better. I can't really see it, so I can't tell for sure how quarter sawn it is looking at it. So before I take another rip, I'm going to check that. I might adjust the bevel a little bit on that and see if I have enough left to get that piece out of there. Okay, so as it turns out, I'm far enough, the board is narrow enough again that I'm close enough to my original quarter sawn face here that I can get that 1/4 inch strip out of here, and you can't see the lines, but I can get that 1/4 inch strip out of here without, with it being really pretty good on the quarter sawn scheme of things there. So I'm going to take another one. Actually, the last one I took was like that. I'm actually just going to flip it over and take one off of this edge. So this middle piece I got is probably not perfectly quarter sawn, but it's going to be close enough for kerfing. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to set it up again for that. I'll just make the cut. Bring you in again later. Okay, so I've modified the kerf lining jig, the kerf cutter, and I'll show you what I did to it. This is all it was. It's just a frame, and this, I'll back up and I'll show you to it on the bandsaw as well, so it makes more sense. But I'll just do that. I'll just direct you over to the bandsaw, and then it will make more sense. Except for this one thing. I was cutting before. I told you I taped a couple of pieces together, so it together was just as tall as this little fence here that's on this thing. So since I had taller pieces, I decided to raise the height. Raise the height of that. So that's why I added this little block on the top of it, just so that the top is square to the world. Okay, so the sled, let me set this down here for now. The sled just fits into one groove on the saw table. It only has one groove, so the second sled just captures this outside edge of the table here. And it's just, it's free enough that it goes back and forth. It's got a little teeny bit of rock, but it's not enough that you'd notice. So you can only get so close to this blade, right? But it's almost cut all the way through to get the kerf to actually bend. So I haven't tested it yet. I'll have to test it to make sure that it's where it is. I'll have to sacrifice a few inches of it to do a test to make sure it's deep enough or it's not too deep. To set the gauge, you can't really see it here, but I actually just taped. I put tape on the front of the block here. I put 3 layers of assembly tape, and I just laid it up to the blade, not running, of course, and put shims down here, and then cut the shims off, and then taped the shims on. And then I did a test cut into the tape, and it almost went all the way through the tape into the block. So then I added, I think I ended up adding 2 or 3 strips of tape out here on the face, because this piece hangs over the edge of the table, and so it's acting as a stop. So before I had this piece here was just hanging farther out, and I think that's one of the things I didn't like about it. So hanging out here, and I just had a stop clamped to the side of the table, and what was happening was it was hitting the stop and then kind of twisting the whole apparatus every time. So where here you could go back and forth without really twisting anything. Every time it hit the stop, it made you just push out a square, and it hangs up when it does that. I could wax it, but that would probably take care of it. I put a radius on this end here. You know, this was through usage before, because you get so far with a strip, and if it was coming out here straight, it would hit here, and it couldn't bend and miss the that. I did even at some point, I think I clamped fixed something to here somehow to keep that so it would just curve out. But it's, you know, I'm not like racing through this. And then what I've added this time too is I put a little pin right here, so that as I just had a line on it before, and I just eyeballed from each curve to the next. So this time it will actually catch on the pin. And that's something I don't know if I think it's set deep enough, but we'll see after a couple cuts if it is. Thinking, you can't hit the pin because the kerf's going in the other side of the board. So if it would have been deep enough, and it would have been wonderful, but no, it's not. I feel like an idiot. Anyway, I won't be able to use the pin. I'll just have to draw a line up here and eyeball again to that line, because the pin, like I said, the kerf isn't from the back of the thing, so the pin doesn't work. The kerf seems just a little shallow too, but you know, I've only got one in it, so it's hard to tell. But yeah, so I'm pulling the pin, and then I will mark this. I did draw a line all the way up to the square. There we go. Here we go again. Well, that seems, let's see if you can see from the edge how much of a whisker is actually left there. It's very, very slight, and it looks a little thicker on top, which would indicate that my saw table or my blade isn't exactly, you know, 100% 90 degrees here. But it seems to be flexible enough, and yeah, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, one thing I was going to mention was that the previous line on my jig, I had them at a 1/4 inch separation. I checked where the plans show the kerfs, and they're actually got it out at 3/8 of an inch, which I know from previous experience is just too far apart. So I actually expanded them from 1/4 out to 5/16. So that's what my spacing is on the kerfs right now. So I'm going to go ahead and set this, fire it all up again, and keep going. Get through these. Obviously, if this was what you did all day, you know, made kerf lining or built enough guitars that you needed to make literally miles of this stuff, you would certainly have to figure out a more expedient way to make that happen. As you can see, although, you know, I've got 3 boards here to do, and I'm going to yield 3 pieces out of each board. That I think these are 45 inches long. And so, you know, I'm going to have 9 45-inch pieces, which is more than enough for, you know, 3 guitars, probably 4 guitars. Anyway, I'll know as soon as I get this one done. So, you know, I mean, it's not a huge deal, but like I said, if it was all you did, you'd want to automate somehow, at least some kind of automatic little gauge as far as each tooth, that sort of thing. Anyway, here we go. It was really starting to, you know, from the weight hanging off the end of the edge of the table there, it was really flopping. And I was afraid it might get a twist in it and decide just to bend over and flop and snap off. So the tape added a lot of rigidity to that. So that's the thought process behind that. Then the other thing is, you can see it's actually very, just when I start getting cocky, look at what happens. Anyway, it's very flexible. And I'll put a piece of tape on that while I'm cutting it so that everything stays together. Make it all one process. Anyway, I don't know how long that took. It took too long. It's tedious. As you saw, I put a stop in it that bent over the top, and then with, you know, that constant process of having to roll it out and roll it under was making this flop more over there off the table. That's why I straightened it out, so that I could just basically use it as an eyeball gauge and slide under the pin and keep going. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to turn you off. Oh gosh. Well, spastic moments with Dane. I was trying to get over to a piece of tape, but I didn't make it.